Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabados of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of statewide-newsservice.com, and statewide news service, jbiztechvalley.com,
Right.
and now the columnist for the Jewish Press in New York.
And Rabbi, we have a very special guest with us today because, we have all these mayors on. Well, this is like the mayor for the mayors. And this is the top guy who deals with all these municipal leaders. And it's Peter Baynes. Thank you very much for coming.
Very happy to be here.
You're the executive director of the New York Conference of Mayors, officially, yes.
Peter, maybe just start off and what your job is, because, there's a mayor of Albany, there's mayors all over New York State. And what commonality or what you do to bring them all together, or something they can learn from each other?
Well, when you bring them together at a meeting, you could have the mayor of New York City, the mayor of a small village in upstate New York. You quickly realize there's a lot more in common than you might think. It's just really a matter of scale. They're dealing with infrastructure challenges, the cost of employee benefits, trying to generate economic development. So they're all different, their communities are different, but there's a certain commonality that brings them together, and they're able to learn from each other because of that.
And one of the big issues is CHIPS, highway aid?
Yep, highway aid's a perennial issue and need, especially this year after the winter we had, and there was some extra highway aid put in the state budget that the legislature ultimately adopted. $50 million more, which was helpful, but it's not enough for all the needs out there. So
you work as a lobbyist also?
We have three main functions: our advocacy or lobbying for cities and villages at the state level, doing training, providing training to local officials, which we just had our annual conference in Saratoga doing that. And then thirdly, and probably most important day to day, is providing legal and technical and financial advice to them. They can call any city or village official, not just the mayor, can call our office with any kind. We get all kinds of questions. So what we say is, don't try to reinvent the wheel at the local level. When you're elected mayor one day and you show up and you have no idea what you're doing, we're there to help you with that transition to understand what it's all about.
What would be an example of a big issue that someone would call you with? Was being sued?
The attorney. We have 4 attorneys on staff. 3 are full time. So the municipal attorney might call about a land use dispute. They might have a feral cat problem. It could be annexation. They're interested in annexing part of the area outside the city. How does that work?
So they don't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak.
Right.
So you're there saying, hey,
yes.
someone has already done it. You don't have to pay your lawyers for a week just to figure out
exactly.
what to do.
We think it's more efficient for them to pay dues to our association than to try to go out and hire experts, find experts that can educate. Sometimes they obviously need consultants and experts, but day to day we can provide the kind of legal advice because we're used to doing it day in and day out. Do we get stumped occasionally? Yes, but for the most part, we've heard the questions before and know the answers or know how to get them.
And you've been in this position 10 years, but you were saying that you've been with NYCOM for 30 years.
That's right. Wow. I started as a legislative
you
analyst.
Started with 5 years old?
Yeah,
you look so young.
I said I'd stay for 2 years and started to enjoy the work and got married, bought a house, had a family, and next thing you know,
you're stuck.
Not stuck, but you're enjoying it, and so 30 years later.
Enjoy their work over there, Mark.
Like I enjoy asking questions.
With guys like you pestering me in the Capitol, why would I ever leave?
That's right, exactly. You live for this and live in the dream.
That's right.
So there are some issues that you won't even touch because one part of your conference disagrees vehemently and the other one there's a pushing from the other side, and that's
a good point. There are most legislative issues we intuitively understand where our members are going to be on the issue for or against. If it's a mandate from the state that's going to add cost to personnel, almost all the time we're going to oppose that. We know all of our members would oppose it, but issues come up like this year we had fracking and gambling,
right.
The casinos. Those were 2 issues where our membership was all over the lot. So besides just trying to protect local home rule on those issues, we did not take a position on the issues pro or against fracking or gambling. So yeah, it's every year's a little bit different here. There's new issues that come up that we've got to decide. Is this a consensus issue of our membership? We do have an annual meeting where we bring together about 70 mayors, and we put together our legislative program, based on what they see as the priorities.
And you go and then lobby it to go to the governor and part of the budget saying, hey, this is what,
Yeah.
we have a consensus. This is what
We
the
do,
mayor's
but
on.
we can only lobby as effectively as our members get engaged in the process, because we don't make political contributions. We're a totally apolitical organization, even though we deal with politicians, our members, every day. So we're only as effective as getting a mayor involved at the local level, communicating with their state legislators, coming to Albany, using kind of the bully pulpit of the village or city hall. That's the only way we can get the job done. Because, we as staff can have the arguments on our side, but when we go across the street to the Capitol, we don't vote for most of those officials there. And so they want to hear from their constituents, the mayors. So a challenge for us continually in this busy day and age for everybody is to get our members engaged in the legislative process, more than just complaining to us, which that's part of the reason we're there, for them to complain to us about what's going on at the Capitol, but to then be with us, arms locked, as we go over to the Capitol to try to get things done.
What are some of the issues as the session winds down that you really want to get done before June?
Well, I'd say there are two key issues.
Most of your issues are fiscal oriented,
Yes.
so they're taken care of in the budget.
The budget addressed
Right.
highway aid and
Right.
state aid and some other programmatic issues. But the two remaining issues I would identify are the tax cap, the property tax cap we have in New York is set to expire next year.
Really, the 2%?
But the 2% cap. But it's, as you may recall, it can only expire if rent control expires, and rent control is up this year for
Right.
renewal. So in effect, the tax cap is up for renewal this year. So
And do you want that tax cap to expire or not?
well, what we want is what was promised when the tax cap was first enacted. And you might recall when the cap was done, the big debate was everybody acknowledged that you can't have a property tax cap if you don't give mandate relief to local governments.
Right.
So then the debate was, do we do the mandate relief when we enact the tax cap, or do we do it after? Well, the governor and the legislature took the easier route and said, we'll do it afterward. Well, that afterward never really came. We haven't, besides pension reform, which was significant, but it's really a long-term benefit. Besides that, there hasn't been much done at all. So our view is, if you're going to extend the cap, or even some people are saying make it permanent, you've got to at least do what you promised you were going to do 4 years ago when the tax cap was enacted.
And do you work with an Association of Counties and the Association of Towns and sort of all get together
Yes,
and like this big 10,000-pound gorilla?
Well, for the most part, we have commonality in issues, the Association
you
of
do.
Counties and Towns. And we School Boards Association as well, so we try to work with them whenever we can. But the other issue with
Do you
the
look at
tax,
their agenda and go, they took our issue?
I mean, there are some issues though. Counties share sales tax with cities and villages, so
Right.
there's some issues like having to do with that interaction where we might be on the other side of the issue from the county. So we're not always
And,
arm in arm.
and Steve Aquario, who's the head of the Association of Counties, and you go in the back alley and duke it out?
we work well together, they also have the Medicaid aspect
Yes,
of
they do.
counties,
Yeah.
which is huge for them, but not
But
really
you
an
make
issue for us.
issues, for example, if you see something, hey, I think, like you were just saying, bringing the counties together, mayoral, hey, you have two cities here, maybe you can combine services, being creative yourself and saying, hey, you have an issue here, two mayors, why don't you?
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, that's a great point. We actually were formed, our organization, in 1910. The city of Schenectady, the mayor of Schenectady called 40 city mayors together from around the state. They were all having the same problem with their water systems and the quality of the water. So they got together for one conference, ended up becoming an annual thing, ended up becoming an organization. So since that time, our mission has been to help cities and villages do things as efficiently as possible. Now we have, with the governor, he's pushing that issue, sometimes not acknowledging the efficiencies that our members are already working on. But because he's made it a priority, we as an association, working with the Association of Towns and Counties, have really tried to, one, educate the public that our members are already doing those efficiencies, but two, helping our members find even more efficiencies like you suggested. So it's a never-ending battle for local governments. They have limitations, statutory limitations on things they can do. So there are challenges to being efficient sometimes, but that's an important part of our mission, is helping them with that challenge.
Now, you started in 1910. The
Not me,
organization.
the organization.
The organization
Not
started.
I'm saying he's looking good, but,
Now, what did you? Now, 1911 was the big fire at the Capitol, so you didn't have anything to do with the association. Didn't have anything to do with that.
No, we didn't utilize those
But-
kind of
but
lobbying
I'll-
tactics. No.
We want our
No.
water issues resolved. And,
But you go back and when we just had our 100th, well, it was 6 years ago now, our
Yeah.
100th annual meeting, we went into the old archives, and back in 1910, 12, 15, mayors were talking about the same kinds of things I am now, that relationship with the state
Yeah.
and the mandates coming down from the state. So it's
That's-
a perennial battle. We try to make incremental improvements in that arena, and we do. But our members are really under a lot of stress right now. You probably hear from the mayors you interview. They've got a cap on their largest revenue source, the property tax.
But is it really a 2%, a true 2% cap? Is it really a true?
Well, it's actually less than 2% right now. It's 2% or inflation, whichever is less. And then there are some exclusions that.
But it's on like one portion of the budget, right? It's not on the whole budget.
No, it's on the whole budget.
It is.
It is. There are certain things that can be excluded from the calculation of the cap, but
Yeah.
for the most part, they don't apply at the municipal level. We actually are pushing for an exclusion for capital investments. You've probably read and heard a lot this year about the infrastructure crisis at the local and state level. Part of the reason our members are not investing in their infrastructure is, one, they just, that always gets pushed aside when financial times are tough. But two, to do that and invest the money in it, they're going to have to exceed the cap. And when you exceed the cap, there's ramifications for that, including we now have certain state income tax benefits, credit checks that are sent to you if your municipality stays under the cap. So that cap is more meaningful than it ever was, and that's why we want mandate relief so our local governments can control their costs, more state aid to help offset some of that lost property tax revenue, and we haven't had an increase in 5 years in that. And then these exclusions from the cap that would make it a little easier.
Now, you said there were two issues before the end of session.
Yeah, the other one I would say is, and I would think any city mayor in this area would touch on it, and that's the abandoned property, vacant, abandoned, blighted property
Now,
problem.
Amsterdam and Schenectady are teaming up to deal with that. That's an unusual circumstance, but
Yes,
what are
they're
they doing?
it's a land bank issue, right?
yeah, land banks is a relatively new tool in New York State, even though it's been used successfully in some other states like Michigan, where you actually create this entity that buys up the dilapidated properties and then markets them and resells them, tries to get them back on the tax roll.
They flip them. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the government doing that, though.
No,
Well, it's a government
quasi-public-private.
Yeah, quasi-public-private entity.
But it's two municipalities that are, 25 miles apart, 20 miles apart, working on from the same pot of money, and they're just working well together.
And they're also working on
Until
code
they-
enforcement, which is a big part of
Yeah.
dealing with abandoned properties, is trying to enforce the building codes before these buildings become so blighted.
I'm sure with the governor talking about downsizing and shared services and less government, to have the land bank, which is another level of government, I'm sure he's just thrilled.
Well, see, that's sometimes, the governor talks about we should abolish some of these small villages, but when you dissolve a village government, what usually happens is you have to create 5, 6, 7 special districts to provide the water, the sewer, the lighting, the fire, all the things that one entity provided. You have to create more government. So it's not really the number of governments you have, it's how well they work together, and that's what we're trying to focus on.
And I noticed that from your annual report or whatever, that the village of Keysville which spans two counties,
Where
Clinton
is
and
it?
Essex County. It's
What,
up,
up way up north?
yeah, just south of
Yeah.
Plattsburgh and
Yeah.
north of
Yes,
Lake Placid, But they dissolved last year, and because they span the one village spanned two counties, they actually had to prorate their taxes to go to each county.
Yeah.
And I'm reading this and I'm thinking, oy vey.
Well, you have that with school districts too. They'll be in multiple jurisdictions,
Yeah.
so you've got to apportion the school taxes. You could be in the town of Guilderland,
Right.
and be in the Bethlehem School District, and you're paying a different tax rate than the folks in the
Oh,
town
yeah.
of Bethlehem.
Location.
Yeah.
It's all about
So,
where you are.
Yep.
And then the village of Bridgewater in Oneida County near Utica, they were also dissolved at the end of last
Why
year.
do they do that? Because they have, what would be their purpose? Hey, we're not making the money.
Well, first of all, villages are the only form of government in New York that the people can create, that the residents of New York can create, and it's also the only form of government that the people can dissolve. At the county, the city, the town level, only the state legislature can create or dissolve the local government. So a village is usually, a concentrated area of a town, sort of like Delmar, even though Delmar is not incorporated as a village. But they decide we want to become a government so we can get the services we need because the town isn't in the business of providing water, sewer, code enforcement, public safety, those sorts of things. But over time, communities evolve. I think in Bridgewater's case, the actual situation there was, it was a really small village. They could not find people to run for office anymore. I mean, I think it was 200 or 300 residents in the community, and they no longer were providing any services either. They had sort of shed all their services to the town or the county. So at that point, they should dissolve. So it's a local decision. There's not one size fits all. You have to have a referendum to do it, and the total number of villages is hovered around 550, 555 for the last 50 years. So some dissolve, some new ones incorporate. So that's.
And I think that's in Rockland County when New Square was created. Isn't that a village?
Yep, New Square, and
Right.
there have been a lot
Just
of.
get together and make their own village.
Right.
And that's totally legal.
Right, and once they do that.
Kiriashol, I think,
Yep.
was
That's
Orange
Rockland
County.
County and Orange. There have been a lot of, in the last 20 years, new villages
Chestnut
there.
Ridge, maybe, yeah.
Yep,
So-
Kaiser, and but when you incorporate as a village, you can control your zoning, which is oftentimes a reason
Right.
that a village would dissolve.
Now, here's
or-
something
or
I
incorporate.
just found out recently just by asking an odd question. I said, when you go into City Hall, the attorney in City Hall is called the Corporation Counsel. And I'm like, but it's not a corporation. And they said, someone told me, yes, it is.
It's a municipal corporation.
It's a municipal corporation, and that's why it's the Corporation Council.
Yes.
And every city is a corporation entity, a corporate entity unto itself.
Yes. Yep. There's a whole
It's-
section of state law that deals with municipal corporations.
So I never knew.
But cities are created. The corporation of a city is created by the state legislature by an act
Right.
an act of the legislature.
So that's why they say incorporated
Yeah.
in 1832 or whatever. But then you have an unincorporated village of such and such.
Yeah,
that
like
was-
Delmar or
yeah.
Latham, maybe. I mean, you go down to Nassau County, there's 64 incorporated villages in Nassau County, but there are a lot of villages. So they'll actually say, any village in Nassau County will say the incorporated village of
Right.
whatever to make that distinction.
I thought that
No.
was just fascinating because most people would think of a government not being incorporated,
Businesses incorporated.
And the thing is, even though we're
And
corporate,
they never run the cities like a business.
well, they're not. I was just going to say they're not allowed to because the laws for a municipal corporation are very different than the laws for a private corporation. And so when mayors are elected and they're demanded to treat the government like a business, there's certain ways you can do that, and and how you administratively function. But you've got bidding requirements, and you have open meetings law and freedom of information law, all those things that a public or a private corporation does not have. So,
Oh, you must you must have a real chuckle when you hear these campaigns and they say, "Run this city like a business, and we'll change everything." And you just must be all over the floor. When
yeah,
you say that.
because there's a lot of turnover at the local level. That's another thing that keeps us in business. Because there's new mayors every couple of years. So
You're the institutional memory.
yeah,
Your group.
Yes,
not Congress.
exactly.
Yeah.
So one day, a guy's a barber, and the next day he's the mayor of a village of 10,000 people, and now wakes up and says, "Wow, I guess I got to run this place." And they quickly realize they can't just do it however they think is the best way to do it. They've got these state laws that they've got to comply with, and we try to help them with that.
And I really get a kick out of the fact that county coroners, do not have to be in the medical profession. They're not medical examiners. They're coroners.
That's true.
And in
Albany County, I get that we've been.
funeral home directors.
Yeah, there've been a lot of non.
Well, they know about
That's
the business at least.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
they're
true.
experts
But
in
in
the
Orange
business.
County, there was a former Assemblywoman, Mary McPhillips, who was the Orange County county coroner. The way she won to be Orange County coroner, her family owned McPhillips Funeral Home, but her predecessor was a tow truck driver. So whenever they had a fatality, he'd come with his tow truck and tow the car away, and then bill the municipality for the tow. and he'd slap and he'd have the cause of death, and then he's off doing his business.
Wow.
So she caught on, and she won that, and then she won the seat to the assembly.
Yep.
So I mean, these stories, you can't make this stuff up
No.
in this state.
No,
you can't make this stuff up.
Not at all.
How difficult is it at the end of the session now that there's this buzz, a slight buzz, of corruption and people being indicted and having criminal complaints against the leadership and things like that, for you to get your work done and for your affiliates and people who you deal with? Are the staff just working, and then you're dealing with the staff, and you're letting all this stuff that's going on in front of the camera just sort of happen, but things still plod along in the background?
Well, we interact with the staff you mean the staff at the Capitol?
Yeah.
And the legislators, but there's no doubt when this kind of activity and investigations are going on, it slows down the wheels of government. The members of the Republican conference in the Senate have had to spend a lot of time deliberating about, rather than about bills, more about how are we going to function going forward. But it kind of cuts both ways, because you mentioned before the budget season is very important. The state budget season is very important for us. The end of session, we tend to do more defense than we do offense. The end of session, it tends to be, when deals are cut the last minute, and a really bad bill can come out of nowhere. Bad meaning it's going to cost a lot of money for local government. So the
Just
fact
to get
that
done with it, let's get it out of here.
Yeah, well-
Sign it, let's get going.
Right.
This is their attitude.
right.
Oh, so you're
So actually, when the legislature can't get things done at the end of session, that sometimes means they can't get those bad things done that we don't want. So, but there are positive things we're working on that we do hope the legislature
the two
can
things
get
that we
to
mentioned.
Yep, the tax cap, and then the
Right.
abandoned property
Right.
issue, which the legislature actually did address that a little bit in the state budget. But there's this whole zombie property crisis, which the Attorney General has spoken a lot about, where banks start the foreclosure process on a house, and then they leave it in sort of suspended animation, the process. And there's the local government can't get anybody to take care of the property or for somebody to purchase
And
the
it gets run
property.
down
It
because
gets
of
run
that.
down.
Now
And
they
when one
know how-
property is run down, then more get run down.
Now they know how the residents feel when they can't fight City Hall, and they can't find anyone to take ownership of. So anyhow,
that's right.
so
Yeah.
the tables turn. There you go.
Yeah.
The zombie
But
properties.
that's a big issue. But a bill came out today that came to our attention that it has to do with the pension system and police. Well, actually, not the pension system, with health insurance for police and fire officers. This bill that the Senate appears ready to pass, and it has passed in the Assembly before, would say that a local government can never change retiree health insurance benefits for police officers and firefighters. So that means no matter what the municipality wanted to do, maybe change the benefits or change programs to a different provider of health insurance, or maybe adjust the retirees' contribution to health insurance, we would never be able to change that ever again.
And those costs just keep rising.
Oh, that's the fastest rising cost
Right.
in a budget is health insurance costs. And because of the baby boom, getting to retirement age, we have a lot of cities now where of their entire health insurance budget, more than half of it is to pay for retirees.
Wow.
So they're paying for people that aren't even their employees anymore. So to tie the hands of local officials, especially in public safety, which
Yeah.
is the most expensive, portion of a local budget, that would be very harmful.
So you're fighting to
so
kill
we're
that
fighting
bill.
to kill that bill the best we can.
Wow. Are you worried about this, the tenor in the Capitol these days? Are you?
Well, I mean, with the political aspect of the tenor, luckily we don't get involved in that. We don't.
No, but it's not giving you any gray hairs or anything. I mean, it's not.
Well,
I mean, that's why I'm saying, while the conferences are talking about, how do we survive and how do we move forward, are the staff, are things still going on with programming council and other staff where they can focus on this stuff?
And a lot of the rank and file legislators. I mean, one example is John McDonald, who's from this area,
Yeah.
assemblyman, was a former mayor. They're still working hard day to day, trying to get their issues moving through. I mean, they're facing the same challenge we are, trying to get their bills moving through the process when the leadership is distracted. But I expect when all is said and done, by the end of June, the normal number of bills, 300-400 bills will pass both houses, and hopefully there'll be more good than bad for local governments in those.
Well, we
bills.
always hope that, I guess, right?
Yes,
It's like-
we do.
What's about the population? You were talking about money, which Mark loves talking about, but just the population. Like I know Buffalo. I mean, you're the expert, and I'm not. I just heard about Buffalo going down in half, and cities are just losing their population. I mean, again, population because of the economics.
Yeah,
just in general. I mean, maybe not New York City, but
But did you hear about Buffalo Billions?
Yeah, well, the money for Buffalo. Well, I mean, there's certainly in the upstate cities, there's been a decline over the last 50 years.
Right.
I think Buffalo has gone down about 50%, their population. But that is stabilized. We've got city of Saratoga Springs is actually on the way up population.
Yeah, but Syracuse, Rochester, Utica, the throughway cities.
Yes,
they've
they were
all gone down.
Like many cities in the Northeast, they were built on a manufacturing economy, and those main manufacturing companies departed, and the cities have struggled since then. That's why we need to fight for the state to be a partner with cities, rather than just say, hey, you guys got to get better at what you do. We need the state to help financially with mandate relief.
Utica lost 60% of its population
really that much.
in like 20 years. I mean, it was just an exodus, mass exodus
You
out of
see
there.
in Boston, Massachusetts, which was also a textile, but they have the computers, again, high tech. I mean, you have to think creatively.
Yeah,
I mean, you
yeah.
can't just say, where's all the textile, because they're in China, wherever they are, Mexico.
Yeah,
China.
you're starting to see that like in Rochester. I think there was, for a while, with Kodak slowly dying, there was just this frustration, well, we got to find another manufacturer to replace Kodak. But what has happened is a lot of the brains of Kodak, the people who worked there who got laid off, they've started up smaller, more high-tech companies. So you're starting to see
boutique companies.
yes. So you're starting to see that switch over to more of a high-tech economy, which that's the way they're
Well, the
going to be.
nanotech, of course, in Albany.
Yep,
I mean,
yep,
you're
that's
getting
a
And
good
Global
example, too.
Foundries up in Clifton Park, or
Yes.
near Clifton Park.
Yeah.
But the southern tier, is it as really as bad as they say it is between Binghamton, Elmira, Corning, Jamestown, Olean?
Well, if you look at the statistics, I don't think they lie in terms of the unemployment rate is higher there. The vacancy rates are higher. The economic activity is lower than other parts of the state. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of pain down in that southern tier corridor. But our job is to help these mayors fight, claw for every job they can. And I think if the state works with them, we can make some progress.
No? Hopefully.
Yeah.
Well, Peter, thank you very much for being on the Jewish View. You're
Well,
doing a good job, and
thank you.
great success for you on behalf of New York State. And just I have to tell the viewers that you're the coach of my. That's not a paid job; that was an extracurricular job. But they were an undefeated team, and so you're successful in baseball also.
Well, hopefully I can become that good as a lobbyist and be undefeated. But thanks.
All right.
Much
Thank you very
success.
much.
Thank you.